most severe risk in terms of global climate, in terms of the Global Climate Risk Index. Its ambitions are huge. It wants to get to net zero in 2045. It has an adaptation plan which needs at least almost $50 billion worth of investment. It needs a banking sector which is already moving towards green and climate finance to move their assets much further down that track. And the central bank, Nepal Rashtra Bank, has already introduced a green finance taxonomy which it's socializing amongst stakeholders. So I could talk a lot more about green finance, climate finance strategies, but I think we have such a distinguished panel that I'd like to pass it on to them. So let me start right over there at the other side. Mr. Guru Prasad Podal, who is the Executive Director for Banks and Financial Institutions Regulation Department at the Nepal Rashtra Bank. I'd like to get his views on the presentation so far and to ask perhaps one question, if I may. So please, so you're just within 2 minutes, your views about what we've heard today from a regulator's point of view.
Thank you so much for the organizer. Yes, of course, this would be very interactive and very knowledgeable session because actually we are very advanced in greening financing and climate-related risks. This actually my governor has mentioned in his session, in his speech also. Actually, we have so long history, not so long history about the green financing and climate-related risks mitigation. But we have started our journey in 2018, where we have started issued one ESRM guideline that then our journey was started. Then we have this mandates the bank and financial institutions in 2022 only. And beside this, we have a couple of things that we are prefer, our policy have preferred to the green financing and climate-related risks that my governor also mentioned about that. We have the single operating limit, we have exceed single operating limit that in the hydropower sector, transmission lines and other things. We have some sort of directed lending also that is in the hydropower sector that is up to 10%. Similarly, we have the deprived sector lending to invest in the renewable financing. These are our initiatives toward the green financing and climate risk mitigation. Yes, of course, then.
So I think that's very interesting what you've just said. I think from I'm sure from an audience perspective, as the regulator of the financial institutions in this country, you know, what do you see as the key regulatory challenges and opportunities to integrate green finance into Nepal's banking sector?
Thanks. Yes. Of course, first of all, as my governor mentioned about we have just launched and approved green finance taxonomy. It will clear about we will get the exact definition of the green and non-green. That will come up with some sort of the clarification about the greening and non-greening. Yes, of course, our green finance taxonomy has already defined what is green and what is non-green. It will be very clear, first of all. Then we have some challenges. Of course, the challenges would come. We can convert into the opportunity also. But there is some sort of the literacy of the green financing and other climate-related risks also we need. Then, yes, of course, as our previous speaker mentioned, we need some sort of the data what sort of the data we need to the bank and financial institution to get to invest in the green area. That is another challenges. Then how we can regulate bank and financial institution. That would be the challenges for us also, regulator side also. I think this as we are in the infant stage, that's why we may face some sort of the challenges, but that challenge would be some opportunity in our case also. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much. I would like to ask a lot more questions, but let me move on a little bit and introduce Ms. Jisun Han from FMO. As a DFI, you've been involved in supporting and leading on green finance around the world. Perhaps the question, which is probably most pertinent in this room, is what are the most common obstacles that you've seen in other countries when integrating climate finance into banking? And how do you think Nepal, given that you have a portfolio here, how do you think that Nepal can overcome some of these challenges?
Thank you, Budika. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. I think the most common obstacle are us, the way we think. We are human beings with stubbornness, and we do have inertia, how we used to conduct business, and that went well, and why do we have to make it complicated? And I think that the perspective is still there, but we need to understand that the world is changing very fast, and climate risk is real. And in this country, globally, we have seen very fast-changing weather patterns, and the weather has been very unpredictable. So we have seen it. So I think that we need to integrate climate risk, even if it's maybe we didn't experience as much as some of the panelists said. So to integrate what may happen in the future, past data won't guarantee what that future will be. So we need to be ready with different studies, different sensitivity studies. So we need to look at our portfolio, and we need to see we need to do the stress testing, how our portfolio is resilient, or if not, then we need to adopt other measures. So the practical, going back to the second part of the question, what are the practical elements we can implement in Nepal? We have seen central bank having a great regulations, and we need to adopt those into individual decision-making process of each bank. So who makes the decision in terms of climate risk, and who reports to the board? I think those will set very practical practices that you have to think about. And while we are implementing these practices, we'll learn what's missing, what needs to be modified, what can improve. So I would suggest that we need to start implementing these regulations within the bank by deciding who makes the decision and who reports to the board. I think that's the first step we can do in practice.
Thank you very, very much for that, those very interesting points. Can I pass it on to Antonio Fluck from the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, based here in Nepal. Antonio, as a development partner, I'd like to first get a bit of your sense of what your reactions were to the presentations we had and your experience here in Nepal as well.
Thanks a lot. Perhaps first I should say, in my previous position, I worked on international multilateral climate finance, the green climate funds, UNFCCC negotiations. So I'm very much coming from that angle. Now I think here we see all the disasters which strike, the high exposure, the high vulnerability. So I think no question that major investments are needed. I think to curb emissions, to adapt to climate change, and to de-risk investments. I think I would also like to highlight, we heard many things, that the Paris Agreement actually specifies under Article 2.1c that global financial flows, all global financial flows, should be aligned to the targets of the Paris Agreement. So this refers to the economies and then particularly to the financial sectors. And one of the major challenges I see for Nepal is to bring the different, we can call it work streams or different crowds, together in one room and have a joint discussion and joint framework. Because I think somehow this discussion on the international climate finance sometimes seems to be completely separate from what I hear today in this room, or what I think the financial sector has already been done. And so I think in Nepal, a solid foundation has been laid, and this started early. We heard this in the presentation, in the previous presentation, but I also think we're all clear urgent action is needed. Nepal is extremely vulnerable. Many people are affected each and every year, and so what we as development partner can contribute, we can try to bring the different stakeholders together, try to support a holistic approach, and we're very keen to join hand with other development partners like FMO, World Bank, and others, and help to advance this important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, one other question I probably have as a follow-on, I think that's, how can development funding be leveraged to support the scaling up of green finance initiatives, particularly in Nepal's banking sector? How can development funding be leveraged to support the scaling up of green finance in Nepal?
So I think there are, of course, different options, but I think I would like to refer back to an example which the ambassador in her opening remarks mentioned. So what we as Switzerland currently are planning in Nepal, we want to join hands with ADB and the World Bank, and then of course with the government partners, bringing in expertise from Switzerland, many decades of experience in Switzerland, but also globally, and help to update risk models, because even in Switzerland we notice the risk models we had previously are outdated. So first we need to improve the risks models. Second, we need to prepare better early warning system approaches. And then the third step in this sequence is, of course, to discuss how can we better de-risk. And the ambition is, together with ADB and World Bank, to really develop the required financial services, but also a pipeline of projects, what investments are needed, what should be the priorities, and this whole process, of course, should be owned and led by the government. So we as Switzerland, we try to bring in our technical expertise and really build the capacity in Nepal, partnering from the very beginning with government counterparts, private sector counterparts, and I'm not talking only about the financial sector, but it can also be companies who help installing early warning systems, for example, but then also, of course, academia, because we also know much more research is needed to understand the risks and improve and update the models which underlie the whole de-risking approaches and instruments. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. If you can pass the microphone on, that would be great. So we've heard a regulator, a development finance institution, a development partner. But now I think it'll be quite interesting to hear a view of an implementer of development finance programs and development finance projects around the globe. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Ms. Katia Silva Leander, Managing Director of Cadmus International UK Limited. I just would like to get from you, Katia, kind of 2 minutes of what were your perceptions of what was said today in these presentations.
So I want to pick up actually on some of the things that Yolanda talked about in her presentation, looking at the why sustainable finance is so important and why banks need to focus on that. It's been estimated that that an increase in global warming to 3 degrees Celsius could lead to global economic losses of as much as $178 trillion over the next 50 years, if nothing's done about it, if we stay the same. But in contrast, if we do something about it and we have a successful transition to a low-carbon economy, we could yield as much as $43 trillion in economic gains over the same period. So in simple terms, the economic risks of climate change are enormous, we know that, but there are financial opportunities that come with tackling it that are also really significant. And so investors and financial institutions across the world are picking up on this, that both the risks and the opportunities exist, and they're increasingly starting basically to integrate climate considerations into their investment and lending processes. So we provide, through our programs, we provide quite a lot of technical assistance at all levels, actually of the ecosystem. We provide support at the policy level, we work with governments, we provide support to the financial sector on the supply side of capital, and then we also work with the real economy, we provide support to companies on the demand side of capital. So looking at the supply side in particular, working with banks, what are some of the banks doing in other countries and other maybe similar countries to Nepal doing? How do they integrate these climate considerations into their climate processes? So first, it's worth noting that there's been a move from a risk-based approach to sustainable finance to a more impact-based approach. So initially, there was negative screening, avoiding sectors that banks didn't want to work in. And these days, there's really a push and a drive to work on more high impact and lending and investing in activities and projects and businesses that have a positive impact on climate. So banks really need to start by developing a strategy. That's the first step. They need to define a clear vision, define the objectives, define what the process is going to be. Then climate considerations need to be integrated through every single step of the investment or lending process, starting with the screening, going to due diligence, through the investment or lending decision, and through to monitoring of the impacts of these investments or these clients. And metrics need to be developed throughout the process, and they need to be consistent throughout the process as well. Then there's also many banks develop innovative finance instruments to incentivize more lending, more development of green business models. We looked at some in Yolanda's presentation, green bonds, there's sustainability-linked bonds, etc. But one of the most important things that need to happen is capacity building of staff. Very often, the banks don't have the skills or the knowledge to provide, to integrate these sustainability considerations. So training needs to happen at all levels of the organization, from top to bottom. And as a final point, I would say a key thing to do is to identify champions within the organization, because having just a sustainability or climate strategy within a bank is unfortunately not sufficient to having it just on paper. Rolling it out is the real challenge. And to do that, apart from training and all these other things that I've talked about, metrics, etc., is really having champions within the organization, in key positions within the organization, who can drive the agenda forward. And really starting from the top at the CEO level, the CEO really is key in setting the tone for this agenda and to make sure that it trickles down throughout the organization.
Thank you very much, Katya. So if you could pass the microphone on, that would be great. So you talked about CEOs of banks. We have one right here next to me, and it's my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Dilip Kumar De, who is the CEO of Nepal SBI Bank and also an Nepal Bankers Association Executive Committee member. So, Dilip, I'd just like to you've heard from everybody, from the various institutions and stakeholders that you have to integrate and maneuver around this space. I'd like to get your impressions of what you've heard today.
Good afternoon to all of you. Just a small correction, I'm Deepak.
Sorry, Deepak.
It's okay, it's not a problem. So thanks to IIN, thanks to NBA for inviting me in these panel discussions. See, I'll put it up in all those, whatever they have told, in 5 A's. 5 A's. First A is that awareness. Second A is that action. Third is that adoption. Fourth is that adaptability. And fifth is that advocacy. Now I'll explain you what is there in all these 5 A's. First one is awareness. I think probably in the presentation also it has been told that how much finance, climate finance is going on in this world. As of now, it is roughly $1.3 trillion. Now, being a banker, it is the worldwide figure. So being a banker in Nepal, I want to see how much pie we have taken. So that awareness must be there for the bankers, for the central bank, and also government, and also the stakeholders, like our industry owners. They should also know what is there. And it is not only, it is a cost for bank, but as my predecessor told, that adopting climate finance is also a gain for not only banks, but also the country. So we have to be aware of what is going on and what is required for climate financing. That is the first stage, first A of myself. Second is that adoption. See, though Nepal has taken this initiative long back, and I'm really, really surprised after coming here to see that awareness in Nepal, and I can tell you from my home country that it is much better than even in India. So we were very much ahead of time. But then we need to adopt, despite that, there are certain things already have happened in the entire world. So what we can do in my second A, adoption, we can go for the best practices internationally, what is happening, and then we can take this adoption in Nepal. So that is my second A. Third is that adaptability. This climate financing is nothing but no stereotype or no taxonomy can define it properly. Because there will be number of things which is left out by the central bank's taxonomy. And in that one, where comes your adaptability? So being a banker, you have to be a judge that what is required and what needs to be done in doing that adaptability. So that is the third one. Then action. Action, it is not only from a banker's point of view. It is bankers, of course, bankers has to identify what are the products and services we can offer to enhance the climate financing. Similarly, what are the financing we can do where climate financing will be taken care of. Then it is not only bankers. Then in case of action, I will suggest, it is from the part of NBA also, you can say, we can suggest that we have a CSR program. And 1% of amount or profit, we are always earmarking for CSR activities. Why not at least 50% of that we can put it in CSR activities related to climate financing or climate upgrade. So that is one suggestion where whether it is government or central bank, or we can suggest from the NBA part of thing. So this is one of the action point which I can say. And regarding other action points, we have to, it is not only our bank we are talking about. We have shareholders. So in shareholders, awareness also is very much important. So that is one of the action point for the bankers to educate your shareholder, to educate the industries, whoever is connected with the bank. So that is another action point which we can say. Then last part is that advocacy, where we not only have to talk about these actions and other things, but we have to be an advocate for climate financing, whatever way it is possible. So I believe with this kind of 5A approach, if we do it in a true sense, I'm sure the climate financing in Nepal will be augmented, and it will be really accepted in the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deepak. And apologies again. So, I think we've had a lot of kind of reactions from a panel which has a vast array of experience. But let me go back to Yolanda and that fantastic presentation you gave us. I've seen a lot of A's in everyone's presentations. It tells me one thing. A is important, and A is now. And A is something that all the A's are something that we need to strive for. We certainly have ambition in this country. We certainly want to move to action. We certainly want to be adaptable. We want to be advocates. But we also want accountability. Yolanda, as a former banker, and as for many of people here in Nepal are starting this journey, and it is a journey, it's not going to happen tomorrow, what are the key opportunities that excite you about the industry here? And what do you feel might be some of the challenges that we have to think about? I know I'm trying to preempt your presentations tomorrow, so I mean, just a very quick few minutes would be very, very interesting perspective from us.
I would go back to the opportunity to do with the energy transition and how clean your energy mix already is as the biggest opportunity that you can capture. When it comes to starting this journey, it is a mindset change, it is behavioral change. Whether the agenda would get adopted is down to individual bankers. And I would try to, from the onset, not to look at it as a project. It is not a project. It is not an initiative. It is part of your day-to-day operation. And I think if you have that mindset, if you think about your existing organizational structure, the existing roles and responsibilities of many of your bankers, think about whether you need new roles, or think about whether the existing credit risk manager can also look at ESG risk. So when you think of it that way, a mindset change, behavioral change, part of day-to-day operations, then I think you're already way ahead.
I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd like to particularly thank our panelists for their insights and their kind of quite candid responses to what is going to be a journey, but one which is hopefully exciting. So I'd like to say thank you to all our panelists.